Time is 21 minutes to 9. On Friday, it will be 70 years since the opening of the Nuremberg trials, the appearance in a courtroom of the men who led the world into the bloodiest conflict it has ever seen and were responsible for the murder of 6 million Jews. The barrister Philip Sands has made a documentary called My Nazi Legacy with the sons of two of the men who appeared in the doc, in which he asks them what they think of their fathers. All these years later, it can't have been easy. The family of Philip Sands' grandfather was wiped out in the Holocaust by them. Here is a clip from the film.
Our fathers both were heavily involved. Heavily. Our fathers committed the most horrible crimes.
My family was very directly affected by the actions of these men. The killing of my grandfather's entire family.
I was raised like a young Nazi boy, and that was the normality. He loved Hitler more than his family.
Well, I'm joined in the studio by Philip Sands himself and by Niklas Frank, whose father Hans was Hitler's personal lawyer and was tried and sentenced to death by hanging at Nuremberg. Philip Sands, what made you want to do it?
It was the outcrop of a lecture invitation that I was invited to give in the city of Lviv, Lemberg, in the Ukraine, led me to look into the lives of various men. Hans Frank was one of them. I came across Niklas Frank's book, In the Shadow of the Reich, read it and wanted to meet him. And we had lunch. We got on very well, despite our peculiar backgrounds, our different backgrounds. And one day, Niklas said to me, "They're not all like me. Would you like to meet my friend Horst?"
And you say different backgrounds. That's a great understatement.
Well, I think the understatement is to imagine my grandfather seeing me with my arm around Nicholas, who I think of as a good friend, the son of the man who caused his family such great, unhappiness. But that is what the passage of 70 years does, and that is, I think, the positive outcome of a terrible and dark period.
And, of course, Niklas, you have written about him yourself.
Yes, it's called in German, it's translated correctly into English, The Father Revenge. I accused him from the first to the last page of all his crimes he committed.
And you had no, simplistic question, you had no difficulty doing that?
No, because I was from the very beginning of my life, and I was 10, 12, 15 years old, I always was furious about what my father has done.
When did you realize what he had done? When were you old enough to get some grip on it?
It was in summer 1945, then the first now democratic newspapers were published, and inside always were pictures full of corpses, also of corpses from children of my age then, and always was written on it Poland. And I grew up knowing that Poland was the private property of the Frank family. And now suddenly it turned out that there's some relation to dead bodies. And that gave me a shock. And this shock is still lasting.
How old were you then when you discovered that?
6 years old.
6? But you must have had so many questions. It must have been impossible for a 6-year-old to comprehend.
It was just that I got this shock and I didn't make any researches, therefore I was too young. But it always was in my mind, and during the year when my father was tried in Nuremberg, I always had my mother listening every evening at the radio, so I got a lot of things in this age.
So how old were you when Nuremberg, when your father was sentenced?
I was 7 years old.
So that was a year on.
1 year later.
And again, I apologize for the question in a way. How did you react when that sentence was handed down?
In summer of 46, the lawyer of my father came to our family and says there's no chance for Hans Frank. He will get the death penalty for sure. So I knew. And when I met him the first and last time in Nuremberg prison, I was sure that he going to get the death penalty, but he lied to me, saying to me that we will soon celebrate Christmas in our house at the lake of Schliersee at Upper Bavaria, and I was sitting on the lap of my mother and was thinking, why is he lying? Why is he lying? He knows exactly that they will going to be hanged. So it was my last disappointment with my father.
How well did you think you knew him? How well do you believe you knew him?
Not very well. Not very well. I was lucky because I had a break with my father, because in the beginning of my life he thought I'm not his son, but the son of his best friend, with whom my mother has also a sexual affair. So there was a break between me and my father, and you have a choice. If one of the parents refuses you, you can go down, or you can build up a very sound distance to your father. And the second happened to me.
So you didn't really think of him as your father, did you?
Yes, I know that it was my father. Later on, he acknowledged.
There was no doubt about that. He was your father.
It's no doubt.
But what did it do to you knowing that your father was a monster?
No, he wasn't a monster.
He wasn't.
A monster would excuse him. He was a well-educated German. He could study law in the Weimar democracy. He was brought up as a Catholic, so he knew by heart and by brain what is right and what is wrong. But he was going on and on and on in full love for Hitler, and he gave a shit about dead Jews or dead Polish people or dead Ukrainians.
So do you believe that he was persuaded by Hitler that what they were doing was the right thing, that murdering Jews would make the world a better place? Do you think he really believed?
No, he didn't believe. It was just his career. He was very...
So he wasn't evil. You say he wasn't a monster, but he...
No, he wasn't a monster.
But he was a truly evil person if he believed.
For sure. It turned out to be, but also evil, you have your brain and you can decide. He had so many chances to resign from his post. He later was the Governor General of occupied Poland, and he was politically spoken responsible for every dead Jew, every dead Polish man, wife or child.
Philip Sands, it must have been terribly difficult for you to relive all this, thinking of what had happened to your grandfather's family. And
well, you've just listened to Niklas, and you've seen that Niklas engages with these matters in an incredibly open way. So I think there was trepidation the first time I met him, but we sat on the banks of the Elbe and talked and talked and talked, and he talked incredibly openly and in a way that very soon built a bond. And we realized, in a sense, that both of us had gone through in different ways, and I'm a grandchild, not a son, so I'm more distant in a certain sense. But we actually share something of a trauma that relates to a particular period, and that creates a connection, and that was actually very helpful. So no, you're seeing me sitting here with Niklas, who I think of as a very good friend, and we have an excellent relationship, and that's the irony of history. And in light of what's going on right now and the attacks in Paris, you ask yourself the question, where will we be in 70 years in relation to exactly the same individuals? And could you imagine the son or grandson of a perpetrator of the attacks last Friday in Paris sitting down with the son or grandchild of a victim? And it's at least possible to imagine that, and that is a hopeful thing.
And your film is called My Nazi Legacy, and we can see it.
I think you can see it from Friday. It's in cinemas. It's really a film about fathers and sons and an exploration of the broader issues, a universal theme.
Philip Sands, Niklas Frank, thank you both very much indeed.
The time is